Is it time to exercise some patience, or is it time to panic in Miami? We're going to discuss that in depth today. How hot is McDaniel's seat? Are we facing the inevitable reality of Tyreek Hill requesting a trade from the Miami Dolphins? Man, we'll go over the PFF grades. We got a whole lot to discuss. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. The media went in on the Dolphins today, and we're going to talk and show some of it. So let's get into it.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's going over the touchdown again. Tagovailoa trying to pick up for it, fires to the end zone. Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one, as it's a little therapy for your Monday after that whole debacle we saw in Indianapolis yesterday. You could probably sit here and say, and you'd have a valid argument, that what we saw yesterday was worse than 2019 against the Baltimore Ravens, because at least we knew what the Dolphins were at that time in terms of a team trying to tank for a pick. We've got the coaching staff, the management, they doubled down on this roster, and that is what we got. So we got a lot to talk about today. Let's start off with Sunday Night Football. The Ravens are who we thought they were, right? Great powerful team. But then when it comes down to crunch time, when it comes time for, the reps to matter and the snaps to matter, that team crumbles like a cookie from your favorite bakery. That's just what they are. And then it gets worse for Dolphin fans after what we saw in Indianapolis yesterday, because Josh Allen might be the best player in football right now. That's just a fact of the matter is, we got arguably the best player in football in our division. So, that's never fun to wake up to. Let me tell you that. Now, continue on here. I've seen some gatekeeping going on in social media, because there are certain people who were, all in on the Dolphins or all in on Tua, and their feelings are changing, and, their own narratives are changing. And you got people gatekeeping, saying, no, stay on that side. And, I get it. Hey, you want to play that role? That's fine. But remember, this has been much, much deeper than the quarterback, what we're seeing, because people seem to have a short memory already. We were seeing a lot of these concerning issues on both sides of the ball when Tua was out. Right? And we can go back to last year. When we were 2-6, I was calling for McDaniel and Greer's job. When Tua was out with another concussion, I was saying I want Nussmeier or Jackson Dart. Hell, let's go back to after the 2022 season. Do you remember this? Who remembers the offseason of 2022 heading into 2023? What was I saying over here? What was I saying after Tua came off that concussion? I like how history revisionists will forget about this or leave it out. I wanted Baker Mayfield. I was adamant about that, about we could have got him from cheap. Everyone knows who's been watching me since 2019. I'm a Baker Mayfield guy. I wanted Baker Mayfield after Tua got injured in 2022. Why? Because I knew we couldn't afford for him to get hurt. And what did I say? If Baker comes in and wins the job, so be it. That's what happens. And I wanted a legitimate backup plan after Tua got hurt in McDaniel's first year. And the first backup plan I wanted probably would have taken his job in Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker Mayfield throwing to my boy Emeka Egbuka yesterday, beating the world, throwing for 41 touchdowns last year. Baker Mayfield right now is a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa. I wanted this guy when he's coming off the Rams because do you guys remember how quickly he picked up the playbook in LA and how good he looked, and you could have got him for cheap, and we'd be in a good position with Baker Mayfield. So all these people who want to gatekeep or want to say, oh, you're too near. No, you haven't been listening closely for, going on 3 years now. That was after and another thing that was unpopular at the time that I was saying in year one of McDaniel was what? This guy needs to give up play calling. And I remember my chat. Oh, this is his first year. You got to be patient. And you can see off the rip this guy didn't have it as a play caller. And I remember I'm a guy who wanted Mike McDaniel in Miami. So I was coming from nothing but an objective place on Mike McDaniel. So I've been saying that about McDaniel. I've been calling out McDaniel's flaws since year one. And I wanted legitimate competition that could take the job since 2022 in Miami. So, you guys want to gatekeep. Don't bring that gatekeeping around here. Just bring the facts. So, and listen, I've been telling you, I've been saying since May, this year I want Nussmeier or Sellers if things fall off the rails. You can add John Mateer to that list. John Mateer, Sellers, and Nussmeier are the three guys that I want. It's not even a question for me. If we're going that route, that's what I want. I want Sellers, Nussmeier, or John Mateer. I'm loving the stock keeps rising for John Mateer every week. What he did against Michigan, I loved what I saw. He looks like he's a winner. I like that. I like that a lot. So, I've been saying Sellers and Nussmeier since May. It's September 8th. I've been hyping up John Mateer behind them, but it's September 8th. Officially add John Mateer to that list, of quarterbacks I want if we're going quarterback in the draft. If this thing gets blown up and a new guy comes in, because, remember when we were getting McDaniel, what was I even saying back then? Before we got McDaniel, I said if they bring in a new head coach, I'm riding with whatever he decides at quarterback. That was after Flores left. So, I've been open to change all across the board for quite some time now. And those are the facts. So, don't let people with bad takes who are trying to pass the buck off on why people don't respect them or like them without realizing it's their bad takes that have led to that. Don't let them pass the buck off and try to make it, the reason people don't like me is because of other people. No, that's not true. You did it to yourself. So it is what it is. And I saw Xavier Howard's comments today. Xavier Howard, he said, we knew he gets the ball out pretty quick. And once we take away his first read, I feel like it's panic mode after that. And it showed yesterday. Did it really, though? The guy was running for his life. There's pressure coming up everywhere. He's making bad decisions. And, the throw he sailed over Tyreek wasn't a second read. So I don't know where that narrative's coming from. You know what I mean? The fumble was him trying to step up in the pocket with pressure coming off the edges. The offensive line wasn't good again. Patrick Paul was good. Jonas Avainaya, he was, good. He had some rough reps, but he was good for the most part. Aaron Brewer, again, had a few rough reps, but he was good for the most part. Keon Smith was a mitigated disaster, you know. So I don't know. Just a lot to unpack from yesterday for sure. Just a lot to unpack, and it's only week 1, you know. And I do say all that to say this: we had to bring back. Who's the next coach? Reason I have no idea. Listen, I'm going to tell you guys something. Harbaugh was the way. They missed the boat on Harbaugh. Remember, I wanted Mike McDaniel or Harbaugh, right? And then the year before I was OC, I wanted Mike McDaniel or Pep Hamilton. Looks like McDaniel would have been better off as OC. But anyways, head coach, if we went new, I wanted McDaniel. If we wanted veteran, I want Harbaugh. Harbaugh was the move, and they missed it. You know? That's the issue. We missed the Harbaugh boat. You know? That was the move. And, you were willing to throw Tony Sparano under the bus for Harbaugh, okay? But the fact of the matter is Stephen Ross, instead of chasing Jim Harbaugh, he bought into the hype of the first year and a half of McDaniel like most of us did. Like, there's content creators out there right now that are saying, well, I told you so. I said, yeah, but after the Broncos, after we hung 70 points up on the Broncos, these same content creators were apologizing to everyone and calling Tua Tagovailoa a franchise quarterback. But now they want to take victory laps after week 1. Okay. We won't even get into all the other times they've been wrong. So, the move was Jim Harbaugh. We missed it. That was the move. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't like John Gruden. When's the last time he built a winner? I don't want John Gruden. I don't want Mike McCarthy. He couldn't get over the hump in Dallas. He made Dallas look like the AFC East Dolphins. I don't want Jason Garrett. I would be more inclined to going and grabbing a big-time prolific college coach than I would be some of these old options out there that the game has kind of passed by. Now, I'll throw you a real curveball, okay? Let's say the Steelers continue to play good and Mike Tomlin stays. You want a real curveball? You want a real idea? What if things go sideways a little in Baltimore? We know there's been a tumultuous relationship between Baltimore management and John Harbaugh, right? There's been a tumultuous relationship between John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens since Ozzie Newsome stepped down. Let me ask you this. Would you trade a draft pick for John Harbaugh? Because I was sitting there yesterday thinking about it. I don't like Gruden. I don't like McCarthy. I don't like Garrett. Would I trade a pick for John Harbaugh at this point? Because I think Luigi makes a good point in the chat. This is what I keep coming back to with this roster. Okay? Does this roster have holes? 110%. Okay? Does this roster have holes? 100. Why would he leave Lamar? Harbaugh would leave Lamar because it seems like they're not going to get over the hump and they've peaked. He had more success with Joe Flacco. All right? Like, this is the problem. Luigi's point, McDaniel can't win with stars. Do you think, and this roster, yes, it's got holes at tight end. Yes, it's got holes in the cornerback room. But it is way too talented on the starter level for what we saw yesterday in Indianapolis. Right? Like, let's be real with ourselves. Look deep inside yourself. This roster is too talented for what we saw. Do you think that would have happened under one of the Harbaugh brothers? No, that wouldn't have happened. And people might be sitting there saying, wow, reason you're on a Mike McDaniel. Well, listen to me. Go back and watch the episodes when we were 2-6, 2-4 last year. I've been out on Mike McDaniel. I don't think he's going to turn this around. When I came back from training camp, I told all y'all I heard some very troubling stuff regarding Mike McDaniel and how he's treating players and coaches. And for the first time, you heard worry in my voice. Now I put that to the side for my predictions, and I looked at how talented this roster was, and this is a 10 to 12 win team based on roster talent alone. The problem is everything's out of sorts all the way up to, the coaching. Like, when you have off days with players, when you have players poorly executing, when you got players not heads in the game, being inefficient, that's when you're supposed to be able to lean on good coaching to correct the situation. We don't have that. I've said this for years. When we get down by 2 scores, whether we're down by 10 or 14, Mike McDaniel looks like a deer in headlights. He can only coach within a score. If it gets any more than that, we're going to have problems. And that's continued to be a theme. Reason on some real stuff, since you're from Canada and closer to some northern teams, what made you a Dolphins fan? I was born in 85. Marino came in the league in 84. One of the first pictures of me as a child is my dad, as a baby, is my dad holding me while he's in his Marino jersey. We've got Italian in our family. There's a lot of Italian, Marino out here became the favorite of every Italian, in Canada. There's a lot of Dolphin fans in Canada because we have a pretty high Italian population, and all of them are Marino fans. Go get Chris Shula. I mean, yeah, sure. But are we just banking on the name there? I don't know. I'd rather go, I'll tell you right now, go get Steve Sarkisian. I'd be down for Steve Sarkisian all day over him. I'd be down for Lane Kiffin more right now. Right? Now, they're probably not going to leave. But to my point earlier, I'd be down for a proven, I'd be down for a proven college coach at this point. Draft my boy John Mateer and hire Brent Venables. Hell, Lincoln Riley at this point. Frustrating that Mike is an offensive head coach, but his offense has been figured out, yet Baltimore and Buffalo run simple but effective schemes and more efficiently. I mean, that's another guy, Joe Brady. Speaking of Buffalo in the history, I'd be more down for Joe Brady at this point. But you kind of nailed it on the head, and a lot of it comes down to ego. A lot of this could be solved by giving more workload to Frank Smith and Darrell Bevell and giving the play calling to one of them and switching things up, but he won't. It's not going to happen. He is going to go down on the play calling ship like the violinist with the Titanic. That's just where he's at. This team needs to get it together. It's going to be a long season. I don't want another depressing season waited for too long for this. And this is why I would have fired I'll tell you right now, on record, put me on record, I would have fired Mike McDaniel last night. Listen, Tyreek Hill quit on you. You went out and got ahead of it. Within 30 minutes, you posted, Stephen Ross posted, oh, I support them. Oh, I'm going with them, blah, 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 blah. This is how they repaid you. This is literally how they repaid you when you backed them up. And take the fan out of it, but just put the businessman. You spent billions of dollars on this team. You're only getting older. How are you not going to every road game and watching over their shoulders this year, saying, okay, I don't trust this situation? You've got a female owner for the Colts who's got a headset on and a play sheet because she wants to know everything that's going on to the last detail. And you got this guy who's not even over their shoulder monitoring their every move after what we've seen. McDaniel wouldn't even have made it to the podium if I was the owner yesterday. I'm sorry. What college coaches would you give a chance? I just mentioned someone, Lincoln Riley, Brent Venables, Steve Sarkisian, there's guys out there, Lane Kiffin, there's guys out there. Now I'd avoid the guys like Dabo Sweeney and stuff like that. But there's guys out there. But Ross, I just don't understand how you're not seething saying you guys made me look like an idiot. You're gone. That's shocking to me. Because I know if that was my money, no, sir. What about Nick Saban? At this point, what do you got to lose? But he's done. I don't think Saban's, especially coming back to Miami. And, we're returning it. It's been a while. Listen, we got to go to the Jabroni of the week. It's been a while. And who's the Jabroni of the week? Dolphin fans like me who thought they could win 10 or more games. And Stephen Ross has to fall under this, no? He obviously thought they could get back to the playoffs and win 10 or more games, or he wouldn't have brought these guys back. But yeah, Dolphin fans like me who should have read the signs, but ignored them because of the talent on this roster. Here you go. I'm a Jabroni of the week, 110%. There's not even a question about it. Definitely a Jabroni of the week. It's Dolphin fans like me who thought they could win 10 or more games. We got to take it on the chin on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Period. So that is my Jabroni of the week. Any of us who believe they could win 10 or more games. Holy jeez. I'm planning to go to the Bengals game, and now I'm sitting here saying, do I really want to travel that far to watch this team? Now, things could change by that time. Sure, 110%. But right now, it ain't looking so hot. And I'll say this. The lack of unpreparedness, I said this yesterday, the lack of unpreparedness we saw from this team, that was more than normal. You know what it looked like to me? It looked like a team that was out on their head coach at the end of a season. That's what it looked like, and it was week 1. That was troubling, and that is what I was worried about coming from training camp after the things I heard. Are coaches and players going to have one foot out or both feet out on this guy, and it's going to blow up? And that's what I saw yesterday. It looked like players who weren't bought in and players who were out. As soon as we got down by 10 points, it was a wrap. And do not give the defense any passes yesterday, okay? I don't want to hear people just blaming Tua and just blaming the offense. The defense, come on. They allowed a team with Daniel Jones to score on every possession. The first time a Dolphins defense has allowed that this century. They allowed them to score on every possession. And the one time they made a stop, Matt Judon's on special teams and runs into the punter. So don't give the defense no passes here. That front seven, you can make an argument that as disappointing as Tua was, that front seven was just as disappointing. Or almost as disappointing. For all the hype, all the talent. Look at the talent on that front. And you got basically no pressure. You didn't make anything tough for Daniel Jones. The front, no, do not give, no one gets the only two people that deserve a pass for yesterday are Devon Achane, that's the only one I'll give a pass to, as well as Jordan Phillips in the fourth was making some plays. Other than that, I ain't giving a pass to no one. No one gets a pass. Zach Sealer, That was the worst I've seen him look, and how long I can remember. Watching the game again, I was blown away by how much he was on the ground. I'd never seen that. No one gets a pass. No one. Honestly, it's our fault as fans why we suck. We constantly support them, and if we stop buying their stuff and stop showing them, they would have to change. No, it's not our fault, bro. Everyone wants to look for someone to blame. Are we playing the games? Are we making the roster decisions? Are we keeping people in charge when it's clear that they shouldn't be? No. Don't turn around and start blaming yourselves for this. That's ridiculous. Okay? It's not our fault. Stop. Don't even start with that. It's not our fault. No pass over 30 yards to Tyreek in over 12 months. And who does that fall on? People are going to say Tua, but that falls on McDaniel. Tua was hurt too, and we still weren't throwing the ball deep to Tyreek. This guy hasn't figured out how to beat too high looks with his offense. He hasn't adapted or adjusted. He's doing the same ish over and over again. The literal definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting it to work. You know, too high. We're facing all these too high looks and you still can't establish a run underneath. You're letting defenses disrespect you, like by just sending 3 or 4 and dropping everyone back. Let alone you allowed your defense to get disrespected on 4th down yesterday multiple times in the 4th quarter. Everyone's to blame. Tua's to blame. McDaniel's to blame. Right? The offensive line and the coaching staff is to blame. Right? The front 7 is to blame. Anthony Weaver's to blame. Now, everyone gets a lot of blame for yesterday, and it goes around. But look at Mike McDaniel. Right? Year 4, still not getting plays in on time. Still having to waste timeouts. 12 men in the huddle on 4th and goal. Like, you know, still not finding that balance between the run. I mean, H.N.'s rifling off 6-yard runs, 2nd down, let's pass it. Still not finding that balance. H.N., since last year, I've been saying, he's clearly our most explosive player and weapon. And what have they done? Still not finding a way to manufacture 20 to 25 touches between the run and the pass for him? That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, yeah. Anyways, you want to look at this, okay? Like, let's go over the snap counts for yesterday. Check this out. I want to talk about something here, okay? So here are your snap counts right here, all right? Keon Smith obviously gets that high snap count. He comes in because of the injury. You know, Julian Hill, Tanner Connor getting about 58% of the snaps each. You know, you see all this. Ollie Gordon only getting 12 snaps yesterday. You know, Larry Borum had to come in for 10 snaps because Austin Jackson went down. Jalen Daniels came in for a few. All right. And then you flip over to the defense. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Dodson, you know, Jones, Brooks, Sealer, Melifanu. What do you notice about this list? What do you notice about this list? I'll give you an answer. Why aren't guys like Willie Gay and KJ Britt getting snaps? Willie Gay was one of our best players this preseason and in camp. Why is he not getting snaps? Why him and KJ Britt looked like a great duo. Why are they not getting snaps? You know? Like, why is there no Willie Gay getting snaps here? It makes no sense. Who's making this call? But a guy like Butler is getting 20 snaps. Okay. Make that one make sense. Melifanu did not look good yesterday, but they fed him 50 snaps. You know? There are just a lot of, even down to the personnel usage, you got questions on both sides of the ball. You figure that one out. Now, let's talk about a few things here, okay? I'm going to play a segment from Get Up on the Dolphins loss, and I'm going to play a segment, Pete Prisco talking about the Dolphins loss. So we got a lot of media stuff to talk about here. Before we do, Mike McDaniel somehow, some way was in front of a podium again today. And this is what he said. The Dolphins lost 4 starters to injury during Sunday's 33-8 loss to Indianapolis, and at least 3, if not all 4, expected to miss time. James Daniels will likely miss at least a couple of weeks with a pectoral injury, but won't miss a season. Jeremy Fowler confirmed it's not a tear. McDaniel said Monday, the team is mulling whether to put him on injured reserve. That's great. What is James Daniels' tenure going to be 5 snaps with the Miami Dolphins and he's done? Because his contract's already set up to renegotiate in the offseason because he's got no guaranteed money next year. And here we go again. And look he hurts his pec after being questionable to start because he injured his ankle last week. McDaniel also said the team is having doctors evaluate right tackle Austin Jackson, who left with a toe injury after sitting out several weeks. And it's that same injury he was sitting out of the preseason and training camp with. The timetable for his return is undetermined, McDaniel said. But that's the guy. You didn't want to touch Tua's money and take money from that restructure, but that's the guy you restructured? And already, here we go. Storm Duck is also expected to miss a couple of weeks with an ankle injury, McDaniel said. And Benito Jones is week to week with an oblique injury. This guy said Keon Smith did a very good job for Daniels. Are you crazy, McDaniel? He was terrible. Waller's trying to play this Sunday, but, who cares at this point? McDaniel addressed Dan Orlovsky, pointing out on X that Tyreek Hill hasn't had a 30-plus yard catch for a full calendar year. McDaniel said Hill would have had 3 opportunities to make vertical receptions against the Colts, but that opportunity was taken away from him from his teammates' non-execution of non-ball assignments. I gotta watch the All-22. He called Sunday's game an embarrassing experience and miserable, nowhere to hide. Said the team has watched 93 of 136 plays from the game, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, but a learning experience. An example of even the best players making mistakes, McDaniel mentioned that Zach Sealer, in his attempt to get a sack, voided his pass rush lane. It was well-intentioned. Dropping of rush lanes allowed for an explosive play. So even Sealer was making mistakes. McDaniel said the team expected to have more production from its pass rush. And you remember, Chubb, what did he say post-game? That players were going out there and basically playing for themselves and doing things the way they wanted to. Not good. But, here we are, and the right side of the line is already compromised. Keon Smith and Larry Borum on the right side. Here we go. Here we are. Right back to where, why do you think, did you see how good Armand Membu was for the Jets yesterday? He let up a bunch of zero pressure, 0 sacks, 0 everything. He was a stud. Why do you think I wanted a right tackle? Why do you think I want Francis Mauigawa if we got our quarterback situation figured out from UM? Because we need a new right tackle. Austin Jackson is not it. I don't know how long we got to keep doing this for. And now this guy's got a hangnail or a turf toe or whatever he's got, and he's going to be out. Who didn't see this one coming? The guy's hurt more than Tua. Unbelievable. And James Daniels, didn't tear the pec, but clearly pulled it or strained it enough where he's going to miss a couple weeks. That's not good. I'm pretty sure that's how Richmond Webb tore his pec back in the day. He was playing with a strained pec, and then he went out there and tore it. So that whole right side of the line is going to be absolutely compromised now. His whole blind side. And y'all saw the hit Tua took on one of those sacks from behind where he didn't even see the guy coming. Here we go, though. Here we go. So let's get into a few things here. All right. You know, I want to get to these Pete Prisco in this Get Up segment on the Dolphins. But let's go through the PFF grades first, and then we'll get into those because we got a lot to say. It's like a 5-minute Get Up segment, so we got a lot to talk about in that. So the PFF grades from yesterday. All right. Offensively, your best graded player was Patrick Paul. That looked like it. He was our best offensive lineman. I went back and watched. Aaron Brewer was number 3. Larry Borum was 2. Devon Achane was 4. Eskridge was 5. Pass blocking, Devon Achane wasn't good. Looked like a deer in headlights. Your worst graded guys. Look at Tua wasn't even your worst graded player. Alec Ingold, Zach Wilson, Jonas Savaianaya, and Keon Smith were your worst graded. I thought Jonas Savaianaya had some solid reps, but he also had some rough reps for sure. I didn't think he was as bad as Keon Smith, though. So those are your offensive grades. Nothing to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. When you look at the passing, they got 0 for 1 to the outside left, 1 for 1 to between the numbers deep. They got him 0 for 1 to the intermediate left. They got him 2 for 6 deep over the middle, and that's where intermediate over the middle, and that's where just 2 interceptions came. They got him 0 for 2 to the left short, 4 for 4 to the middle short, 4 for 5 to the right short. They got him 2 for 2 middle behind the line of scrimmage and 1 for 1 to the right behind the line of scrimmage. When Tua was kept clean, which was on 21 of his 27 dropbacks, he was 14 of 20 for a touchdown and 2 picks with a 70 completion percentage. I got to watch the film because I know that ball sailed on him, but it also looked like he was throwing a post and Tyreek flattened out his route and ran a dig. So I got to go back and watch that too. I haven't watched the All-22 yet. I will tonight. Average depth of target was 6.2 when he was kept clean. It was 13 yards under pressure. There was a drop when he was kept clean. So his adjusted completion percentage was 75. His NFL passer rating was 61.2 when he was kept clean. Under pressure, it was 39.6. His time to throw when he was kept clean was about 2.41 seconds. Under pressure, it was about 3.52. When you look at the offensive line, they gave up 7 pressures, 2 sacks, 2 hits, and 3 hurries. Jonas Savaianaya gave up a hit and a hurry. Devon Achane gave up a sack, which is 110%. I already saw the film of that. Tanner Connor gave up a hurry, and Keon Smith gave up a sack, and Aaron Brewer gave up a hurry. Targeted twice, allowed 0 receptions. Jason Marshall targeted twice, allowed 2 receptions for 20 yards and a first. Jalen Phillips targeted once when he dropped into coverage, allowed 14 yards and a first down. Kenneth Grant, who, yes, they were dropping into coverage, which was ridiculous, allowed a reception to Josh Downs for 6 yards. So those are, I mean, you look at Tyler Warren, and the safeties and, the linebacker help, Ifeatu Melifonwu and Jordan Brooks were just giving him the world, basically. So those are your PFF grades for week 1. Nothing great to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. So let's get into some things I want to talk about with you guys, all right? Over 400, over 400 or well over 400 of you in the chat. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Let's listen to what Get Up said about the Dolphins' loss. Now, this thing is going to go a little vertical, when it shows highlights, just because that's the video I lifted it from, but it's about what they say. Listen to what they say. All right? Listen to what they say.
If you're the Bengals fans, here's what you can say. At least we're not the Dolphins. Holy smoke. The Miami, the scale, a QBR is on a scale of 1 to 100. His was 2.7. Here was Coach Mike McDaniel after the game on how he views the pressure as head coach. You will also hear from a very unhappy Tyreek Hill.
I don't see this job void of pressure. I don't see entitlement in this job. But, I'm not. I think the most important thing is that I worry about doing my job.
This was a big, kicking the ball, for us. So I feel like next week will be better.
We bleeped that, huh? So of all the things that get said on a daily basis, we bleeped that. But you get the sense of it. You were reacting strongly when Mike McDaniel was talking there. What were you reacting?
Yeah, what the hell is he talking about? Maybe he's on a different level, McGenius guy, whatever the hell he is, nerd boy. But anyway, their team has no respect for the coach. They play like that. They're like, come on, man, get us a dang guy in here. Where's the physicality of this team? What did you say?
They're soft. They're soft.
They're soft. I'm with you on that. Every part of their football team. They have tons of talent on this team. Daniel, we were talking, that's why you picked them to win? Because they have tons of talent. Yeah. They don't play with any
I agree with that.
Any smoke to them.
Their tape was a mess. And you could blame everybody. You could blame the coaching. You could blame the players. There's blown assignments by everybody on offense. Tua's floating the ball for interception. There's a blown assignment by the right tackle on protection. There's a blown assignment by the back. I mean, this is a lack of preparation, a lack of understanding, a lack of commitment. They're getting outflanked on defense on a consistent basis by basic concepts by Indianapolis. This was a bad tape to watch. I'd also say this. One of the notes watching this game that I kept coming up with was, where is Tyreek? It was wild to see how many plays Tyreek Hill wasn't on the field. I accounted for him on the field, I think, 4 times on third down. How about this? Today is 1 year. 1 year since Tyreek Hill has had a catch that exceeded 30 yards.
That's crazy.
That's his whole game. So, D. Wood, could you expand on your thought? Because I know soft is not a word you use lightly. Yeah, we all understand how big a deal that is in the football world. So what do you mean by it? What did you see?
I've always said when it comes to the Dolphins, their play style doesn't it's not conducive to long-term success in the National Football League. Mike McDaniel, he draws up a lot of eye candy and try to fool people. But in the National Football League, it's about the line of scrimmage. It's about, it's about physicality, imposing your will on that. There's none of that with the Miami Dolphins. And I've talked about their culture down there stinks. We've been talking about it all offseason, and when you come out there and lay an absolute egg on week 1, 33-8 to Daniel Jones in week 1? Like, come on, give me a break.
Shefty, what should we be saying here?
We talked about the Bengals, how they've struggled on opening day. Well, the Indianapolis Colts hadn't won an opener in 4,400 days, dating back to 2013. And they acted like they had been saving all this fury against the Miami Dolphins. Plus, ESPN's got this stat called net efficiency.
Listen to this.
Which incorporates offense, defense, and special teams into a number that grades a team on a scale of 1 to 100. Miami's net efficiency yesterday, according to our grading system, was 1.7 out of 100.
Oh my!
Like, honest, my thought is, when do the calls start coming in for Tyreek Hill? Like, that's honestly where I sit right now. When do the calls start coming in for Tyreek Hill?
He's bigger than Tyreek Hill.
I understand that. I understand that,
okay.
of course.
Yes.
I still think there's an opportunity to get it back on track, but watching it, I'm like, when do the calls start coming in for Tyreek Hill?
When the losses start mounting up and teams decide that they're better off building.
So there you go. First of, I do think Rex Ryan was a little out of line with the insults and the name calling he was throwing at McDaniel, but I think they made a lot of valid points. This team is a reflection of their coach right now. And, they're kind of saying what I was saying earlier. You get the sense that people are out on McDaniel in the building, and that's why you're seeing this. I mean, you saw them stressing. Rex Ryan, I agreed. This team is too talented for what we saw yesterday. And like they said, to Daniel Jones, like, come on. And now the talk about Tyreek Hill. Mike Florio brought up how the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs are two teams to watch regarding a Tyreek Hill trade. Now, it's also come out from, I believe, Ian Rappaport. It was Schefter or Rappaport reported, I'll let you know right now, that they're not looking to trade. They're not looking to trade him right now. They just aren't. So, they're not looking to trade Tyreek Hill right now. That's just where they're at. So we can sit here and talk about that, and I would agree that, yeah, that conversation, that's eventually coming. But, it is what it is. I don't think a trade is, like, this is what I think. I think you'd see him get traded after, like, week 3 if this stuff continues to be off the rails. I could see them being like, okay, yeah. But Schefter did say today, I believe on Pat McAfee, that the team has zero intention to trade him right now. Shout out to Penn for sending 5 Phinside The NFL gift memberships. Appreciate you. So, I think, and from what we saw with Buffalo, do you really think this team's beating Buffalo? We might have problems with New England. So, yeah, you got to be very careful here. We're going into could be nasty territory. Right? So, I don't know. Listen, before we keep going, we're going to get into Prisco here. I do want to shout out the sponsor of today's video, and that is Sleeper. All right, think you know football? Then try to turn your football knowledge into real money with the Sleeper app, the ultimate fantasy sports app that can turn game day into payday. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less your favorite players. All right, with more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code PHINSIDE, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Listen, currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. You see, I like James Daniels and a few other things for tonight's game. Check it out. Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring the video. So let's talk about Mike McDaniel a little bit and how hot his seat is, because, listen, these are people we usually don't agree with, but Pete Prisco is making some good points today. So this is what Pete Prisco had to say.
Not this bad. No, absolutely not. Look, I know it's tough
He
to
didn't
open
expect
on
the
the
loss to
road
be this bad.
in the NFL. It's always hard to do. But you got to go in there and compete. And they didn't even compete. It wasn't even close. Tua was terrible. I mean, the offensive line wasn't good. He kept getting hit. He turned the ball over. And defensively, they made Daniel Jones look like he was Peyton Manning in a Colts uniform. And it's a bad combination. And they have major problems. Let's be real. You have the discipline problems from a year ago. They tried to be tougher this year. New coach. Look, ultimately it falls back on the head coach. Mike McDaniel went in there. He was loosey-goosey. He cared more about playing music at the practices, and somebody has a good practice, they can play their music. Whoa, you wear the orange jersey. Give me a break.
You hate that orange jersey.
I hate the whole idea of lack of discipline. Remember at the end of last season, he said, I find these guys, but they still were late. Well, that's on you. It's a reflection of you. So the problem is Mike McDaniel. And I think Mike McDaniel's seat just got really, really hot.
So there you go, Pete Prisco. And I agree with that. I mean, I think his seat is really, really hot. I think it was already hot heading into this season. And I agree, it's really, really hot. And I do think he's the main culprit. I do think a lot of this falls when you're that unprepared on all phases. You know, yeah, special teams had a few good plays, but that I'm always going to come back to that Judon roughing the punter. When you're that unprepared on all three phases, and you're even questioning whether some guys are bought into you, and it's week one, that's not good. That's not good. So, you know, I don't know. You know, I like, to me, Mike McDaniel, this is another reason why I want change right now. I don't want to be the fan of a team that's dead men walking into Buffalo, and that's the sense I get under McDaniel right now. Make Weaver the interim head coach, let Frank Smith and Darrell Bevell run the offense. End of story. End of discussion. You know, did Anthony Weaver do himself any favors yesterday? No. But at least he's an unknown right now as a head coach. We know what McDaniel is right now. You know, year 4, you know, you can say what you want about Tua, but we've seen growth and development in his game. Yeah, he looked terrible yesterday. He looked horrid. But over the last couple of years, we've seen growth and development. We've seen zero growth and development over Mike McDaniel. Still getting plays in late. Still doesn't understand how to balance the run with the pass. Still looks like a deer in headlights when we're down by 2 scores or more. Still not a great play caller. Still having discipline issues, etc., etc. He hasn't grown and improved in key areas he needed to that were clearly flawed, like being a play caller that we saw in year 1. We still haven't seen any growth. And now it's getting worse behind the scenes because he's feeling the walls closing in. He's feeling the pressure, and he's being a little toxic behind the scenes. But that's a conversation we'll have when he's out of here. So I don't know what to say. He's lost the room, and I think he's lost all faith, rightfully so. Because I'm going to tell you, I'll give you something. You know, I think Tua's more in on Bevell and Frank Smith than he is on Mike McDaniel. All right. Now, when you look at the next gen stats from yesterday, all right, Tua Tagovailoa, longest completed air distance, 27.3 yards. Daniel Jones, 45.7. Fastest ball carrier was D. Eskridge at 21.01 miles per hour. Alec Pierce at 19.68 miles per hour for the Colts. Fastest sack, Bradley Chubb got there in 4 seconds. Nick Cross got there in 2.5 seconds. You look at the passing charts, it's a little different than what PFF showed. Next Gen Stats has Tua 1 for 2 to the left, deep, 0 for 1 to the left, intermediate, 2 for 6 to the middle, intermediate, 0 for 1 to the left, short, 2 for 2 to the middle, short, 4 for 5 to the right, short, 1 for 2 to the left behind the line of scrimmage, 1 for 1 middle behind the scrimmage, and 3 for 3 to the right behind the line of scrimmage. When you look at rushing, Devon Achane was finding more success. Wow, what a surprise off of his left side. And it's only going to get worse with James Daniels and Austin Jackson out and Keon Smith and Larry Borum being your right side for the next couple weeks. The average receiver separation, the league average is 2.98 yards. Akine had 4.33 yards. Tyreek Hill had 3.85 yards. Waddle had 3.56 yards. Malik had 3.66 yards, and Tanner Conner 2.06. So most of your receivers were beating the league average in separation, but you got Tua getting sacked, pressure coming, and yeah, Tua looking indecisive at times. Just a horrid game from Tua. He deserves every criticism thrown his way this week. That's not a $212 million quarterback play. Your average separation from the quarterback, the league average is about 4.57 yards. Jalen Phillips was 4.22. Then it was below the league average after that. Sealer 5.17, Chubb 5.55, Grant 6.72. Wow. They had Grover Stewart and Bukem all inside that league average of 4.31 yards and 4.47 yards. Buckner 5.09 yards and Lewis at 5.8 yards. So, yeah. Shout out to Penn for donating to the channel. How many? Dude, 2 games most. I think if we lose this week, he's gone. I think if they win this week but lose against Buffalo, he's probably gone. So, guys, we'll be back tomorrow night. We got the finish line this week on Wednesday. Fin Too Deep on Thursday with Neil. So it should be an interesting week here on Phinside The NFL. All right? Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new. Over 430 of you in the room. I'll see you on the next one. Fins up.